You've clicked send in Postman 100 times. But do you actually know what happens next? Why some requests succeed, others fail, and what those status codes really mean? In this video, you'll finally understand what an HTTP request is, what the response actually tells you, and how methods like get, post, put, delete, and patch change what your API does. Once you get this, every button you click in Postman makes sense, and debugging APIs becomes way easier. Let's break it down step by step. Whenever you want to test an API, the first step is to send an HTTP request. Think of a request as a message from a client to a server asking it to perform a specific action. For example, you might want to retrieve user information, create a new user, update existing data, delete a record. To perform these operations, your application, or Postman in our case, sends an HTTP request to the API. Every API interaction follows the same basic flow. An API request travels from the client to the server, where it is processed, interacts with the database if needed, and returns a response back to the client. Postman acts as the client, allowing us to send requests and inspect the responses returned by the API. Every API communication has two parts. The first part is the request. The request contains information about what we want the API to do. The second part is the response. The response is what the API sends back after processing the request. For example, imagine you're using an online shopping application. When you open the product page, your application sends a request asking for the product details. The API retrieves the information from the database and sends back a response containing the product name, price, description, images, and other details. Without a request, the API has nothing to process. Without a response, the client never receives the result. These two concepts are the foundation of API communication. As API testers, our primary job isn't just sending requests. Our main responsibility is validating the response returned by the API. We need to verify that the API behaves exactly as expected. Some of the most common things we validate are the status code, the status line, the response body, response headers, cookies, response time. For example, if a request is successful, we might expect a status code of 200 OK. If a new resource is created successfully, we might expect 201 created. If a requested resource doesn't exist, we might receive 404 not found. We'll learn how to validate all of these in the upcoming videos. Now let's look at the different types of HTTP requests that REST APIs commonly support. The 5 most common HTTP methods are get, post, put, delete, patch. Each method has a different purpose. Choosing the correct HTTP method tells the API what action you want to perform. Let's understand each one briefly. A GET request is used to retrieve information. It asks the API to fetch existing data from the database and return it. For example, if you want to display a list of users, products, or orders, you would typically send a GET request. Remember one simple rule: GET retrieves data. It doesn't create, update, or delete anything. A POST request is used to create a new resource. Suppose you have a registration form. When a new user submits the form, the application sends a POST request containing the user's information. The API stores that information in the database and returns a response confirming that the resource was created successfully. So POST is used whenever you want to add new data. A PUT request is used to update an existing resource. For example, imagine an employee record containing employee ID, employee name, salary, designation. If you want to replace or update the complete employee record, you send a PUT request. PUT generally updates the entire resource. A delete request is exactly what its name suggests. It removes an existing resource from the database. For example, deleting a user account or removing a product from an inventory system. Delete is used whenever data needs to be permanently removed. The last HTTP method we'll discuss is patch. Patch is also used for updating data. However, unlike PUT, patch updates only specific fields instead of replacing the entire resource. For example, suppose an employee record contains employee ID, name, salary, designation. If you only want to update the employee's salary while keeping everything else unchanged, patch is the better choice. A simple way to remember the difference is PUT updates the entire resource. Patch updates only part of the resource. Although many APIs support patch, you'll often see developers use put for complete updates. We'll demonstrate both methods in separate videos later in this series. In this video, we learned the basic concepts behind API communication. We understood what an HTTP request is, what a response is, why response validation is important, and the purpose of the 5 most common HTTP methods: get, post, put, delete, and patch. Understanding these concepts is essential before we start building requests in Postman. In the next video, we'll create our very first GET request in Postman, send it to an API, inspect the response, and learn how to validate the returned data. So make sure you don't miss it. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.